So I'm going to start while waiting for Dr. Villegas for one question for our trailblazers in terms of getting your collective wisdom, and then Dr. Villegas will ask the captains for their insights. My question is simple. I mean, at the end of the day, as Secretary Joey's mentioning, you've got 99.6% of the industries as SMEs here. There's a wide yawning gap between SMEs and the conglomerates right there. The question is, how are you going to leverage tech innovation disruption to make sure you bridge that gap, join the value supply chains, and really leapfrog Philippine industries, especially on the SME side?
So I'll give one concrete example, and I think a number of the panelists already talked about how technology and innovation in our way of doing things can really lower the cost, because these SMEs have a real big challenge to compete against bigger, more well-funded groups. So, for example, I'm helping a company called Xlog. Xlog is busy in the logistics business. What they're trying to do is disintermediate the freight forwarding business. Freight forwarding business is importing, selecting your trucks, selecting your shipper, selecting your broker. All of these things can be disrupted. And also there's a lot of data in this process, so there's a lot of these things are going to be ongoing. We have financial partners who are very excited about the prospects of being able to look at that data and then from there learn who is bankable and who's going to be somebody you can lend money to. So these are just some of the examples. Technology can be applied in so many areas, even in education as well. So really the SMEs will be helped as I think that's one of the lessons I wanted to share. You study the market. You need to talk to the people that Joey has, because when you talk to them, you understand the nitty-gritty of the problem. And again, it's not going to, most of the time, it's not just one instant idea. So you have to spend time.
Okay, thanks, Paco. And like Carlos saying, there's communities of practice there where you can shorten the learning curve. Carlo, Heidi, Stephanie?
Yeah, I have a quick thought about that. So with technology, there's two things that are happening that I think really help SMEs. First is opening up greenfield sectors. So data science as a profession has only existed for 9 years. And if there are no players in that market, that gives people more of a gap to get in there. So I hope to see more SMEs. I am seeing already a couple, but want to see more and more push into new spaces where they have more room to grow. The second thing is platforms and productivity apps. Make it much easier first for people to access new markets without having to go through central agencies. Or an example of that would be e-commerce platforms. Anybody can be a seller on Shopee or Lazada. Being able to take advantage of that platform and be in that value chain and in front of 10 million potential clients is huge. And the third is productivity apps. So I think Carlo was showing like his specific list, but I use a list that's very similar. You can use WhatsApp, you can use Gmail. Your level of productivity as an individual or a small team is now much bigger. Of course, that's assuming that you have a mobile device that can connect to the internet in the first place. I think that's a big challenge that on the enterprise sector, I know that a lot of investment is going on in that, in physical infrastructure to enable digital infrastructure. So that's where I think I'm very grateful for the captains and their work.
So around the needs of the industry, and as the infrastructure unfolds, we'll actually be able to get more access and inclusive business models in there. Heidi?
Yeah. I come from a perspective of a global multi-billion-dollar company who's decided to set up operations in greenfield markets. And with that perspective comes the realization that, hey, you go to Puerto Princesa, you'd be lucky if you can get people who actually could connect to the internet at 5 Mbps. Okay? And so my thought process in the matter is, again, just like what I said earlier, start with what little that you have where you are. In our case, it was a deliberate decision, for example, to make sure that 80% of our suppliers are small and medium local enterprises. And slowly but surely, educating them to the new technologies. Like, for example, when we started accrediting these local SMEs and telling them, hey, by the way, you need to be on SAP because that's the procurement platform that we're using. They all opt out. They didn't know how to use it. Plus, they have computers. Some of them have computers at home, but they could not connect to the internet. So we had to go back to the basics. The political sort of will was there to work with the small and medium enterprises. They didn't have the technology to work with us. So, the truth to tell, we went back to basic. We revised our policies, we revised our procedures, made it more manual, in the hope that sooner or later, when the technology catches up and becomes available, they'd be able to jump into it.
Great, good starting point there. Carlo.
Yeah, I'll just add on based on what Stephanie C. mentioned. So platforms and then brute force. So platforms, I'd say the one that's been so effective with my communities and the people I've mentored so far is Workspace by Facebook, because everybody in the Philippines uses Facebook. So the interface of Facebook actually is easy for them to actually transfer. No, so it's and brute force is what I do this once in a while, but like I have a small team, very lean, and I tell them we need to switch to another productivity app. So I tell them, look, I'm not gonna respond to you until you switch to Slack, and that works. It's a faster way to learn.
Nice combination.
Can I just add one thing? I think one of the things we are missing in the Philippines is that we focus on micro SMEs, then we focus on the conglomerates. There's a huge gap in the middle that we don't talk about nowadays. These are the guys that you really need to move up, right? And so, like, I love your dad's motto or your family's motto: pay those suppliers on time. If we don't, we kill them, and the banks won't lend to them. That's why there's so many innovations that really have to go. And again, that's why it's not that you need a PhD. It's just that you have to have the habit of spending the time to do the research, and then you still need to work it. It won't be instant. You're going to have to slug it out, and like Stephanie, you get funding and again, because you're going to have to figure out how you will survive supplying to the conglomerates. And I guess the big new IPOs are those guys who manage to find a way to supply to them. The government's another one, Bernie. We need to get the government to support these guys. Because right now, you only buy from a big guy. We say automatic, if you're not big, we're not buying from you. So how are we supporting the entrepreneurs? So that's a big thing, and that's a big gap in the middle. And now, you talk about seed investing, we get angel money, a few 200,000, but after you get the 1 million or 200,000, Series A, Series B, which is needed before a big conglomerate will want to buy these guys. So I think we really need to support the middle.
So access to capital, best practices for that sector in the middle, and more importantly, integration to the supply chain of large conglomerates. Right, Dr. Villegas, off to you for the captains.
Thank you. When we hear the word sustainable, we usually talk about the environment, the planet. But an equally important meaning of sustainable is we have to guarantee that the next set of leaders will continue the work done by our captains of the industry. And I'm now referring to management succession. 3 of our captains belong to family corporations. Some of them are second or third generation. I'd like to ask each one of them, how do your organizations make sure that there is management succession? And I will start with Riza, because she can claim she's done it. She's retired, and there's now a new CEO that will continue her work. And later on, you can go one by one to Fernando, Joey, and Hans. How do you make sure that you will have future leaders?
So we have a very structured succession planning process. Every year, we assess the entire organization, the one downs and so on, for those who have the potential to become leaders of the future. And then we assess them based on their capabilities, their skills, and then the gaps. Now, we figure out how do you close those gaps. And there are several ways we do it. One is through training. The other one is through doing. We actually assign people to projects that will round out their set of skills. So I'm going to use, for example, our new CEO, who happens to be in the audience, that he was our Chief Financial and Management Officer, so handling all these finance aspects of the company, investments, risk, actuarial, etc. How do you round him out to become a future CEO? So we made him handle the entry into the middle market, develop the business case, go out into the field, go into the marketplaces, talk to the people, really understand the mindset of the consumer and the mindset of the salespeople. And I'm glad to say he was very successful at that. And the fact that he was not from sales, he had a completely fresh mindset, was able to figure out new ways of distributing and reaching out to an entirely different demographic. So learning and doing, and really making sure that when you say, these are the development plans, push through with it, make sure that you actually prepare them.
Bernie, this is probably one of the most important things that we have to do within companies to make sure that there's continuity. And we do it at many different levels. I tend to focus with my brother on the more senior levels, mid-level and up. But we go through this for quite a long period of time, twice a year, where we really look at the performance of certain individuals. We try to move them around to different types of jobs so that we can test them until they get to the type of seniority where we can give a very large responsibility. One thing I'd like to leave with the audience that has changed dramatically in the last 10 to 20 years is we now have 30-year-olds or young 40s running very, very large companies. This was unheard of when I started to work. And so really we are able to give huge amounts of responsibility much earlier, and within the conglomerates, although they look very big, at the end of the day, they are a series of many, many, many companies inside with all kinds of entrepreneurial opportunities. That's how we test people.
Fernando, if you don't mind, I'll ask a more personal question. How do you combine members of the family and professional managers? That usually is a very key question.
Sorry, what was the first
Members of the family,
yes,
and professional managers, how do you combine them in your management team? Like, for example, I know that children are programmed in a specific way, that sometimes you can make them work for the competition, etc., so that when they join, they're equal to the professional managers. Is that something that you are very conscious of, members of your family?
Yes, well, the children are really raised not so that they will work in the company, but so that they will really be successful in their own right, in whatever field they want. As they get older, if we see that someone has the ambition and the talent to join and can be competitive with the best talent that we have, then we start testing them and bringing them into the company. If not, they won't succeed and they won't have the respect of the rest of the employees. So it's not a right. They have to earn it.
Joey?
Well, ever since I've been putting more time in government, the company is doing better. And quite frankly, it's a big challenge on my part to convince my children to work for our company today, seeing that I've been pushing entrepreneurship and I'm telling them, look, I'm getting old. We're in the last quarter of our lives, so I mean, you gotta start learning. And they keep telling me that you start with your own little thing, let me do my own stuff. So my wife and decided to just let them do what they want to do. But in the end, I believe that there should be more professional managers, because when you have too much siblings in the company, then it's a pretty big challenge. I've experienced that in my 40 years working for our corporation. So I believe the principle of really strengthening the professional managers, giving them the entrepreneurship culture, and they're exposed to what I do. And I've always shared with them that, one is to get a great education. But many of the successful entrepreneurs I have there, seen in Philippine top 50, many of them don't even get the summa magna or whatever level. They're just high level in EQ. And to me, that is what I try to share with my team and my kids. Excel in your school, but don't forget EQ.
Eyes?
Okay, I think it's going to be two parts. One is the professionals, the other one is the family. Let me start with the professionals. I, for one, have been very supportive about this, developing succession, doing succession planning, which entails actually annual review of your organization. Because as we expand, we needed to really expand also our organization. And as far as all our executives are concerned, in fact, very recently we just introduced the so-called 60, you're retired. But it doesn't mean we don't want you anymore, but it means you have 5 years to develop somebody to take over your position. We will review you again after 3 years, and then when we see that you have developed somebody, the next 2 years, we will just be sitting back observing the guys that you have developed. That's the kind of succession planning we have already in place in our organization. Now, for the family, well, that's a tough question. Well, for the second generations, I have to say, we were never given a choice. Whether we like it or not, you are part of the company. We were required to start working on weekends at the age of 13. The third generation now had it much better because the second generation all got together. We came up with our family constitution. So the first thing that we decide on the third generation is it's their choice. They have been given only 2 choices. One is to be owners, and you'll have nothing to do with the company. And the other one is to really show that you really deserve the position. You will have to grow into it. So we have already, the third generation, some are already pursuing on their own. Some are already in the company. But for my personal approach on my own children, I am a bit tougher. Not that I don't give them choice, but you see, I have had also a son who, after graduation, I required them to work for somebody else. Commit the mistakes somewhere else first. and then after 3 years, if they really want to join, they come in. But even having said that, I also observed that they also have certain problems when it comes to really running it like an entrepreneur. So I tried to understand it, and I realized I would always compare myself to them. I would say, why was it so much easier for me and very different now? So what I learned is, because when I was still studying, I did put up my little own business. It's a small food business that I've done, and started with a 10,000 pesos capital, borrowed a little from left and right, and now have ended up now with 30 plus branches. Although I've given those responsibilities to my wife because of my responsibilities in our company, I wouldn't have much time for it anymore. But talking about that, it made me learn the whole entrepreneurship or understand the business holistically. So then I required now my other children that first you go and work for somebody else, commit the mistake. Second, you do your own little business. But what I'm seeing also, some of them are basically successful. They learn all their tricks, being able to talk to creditors, being able to talk to government officials, to understand the business which you don't learn in school. But the risk I am now running is there are those who are a bit more successful than I wanted them to be. So I'm not really sure if they will ever come back and join us. But nevertheless, that's the kind of choice we have for our family members. Not only to my children, but to all my other nieces and nephews. Everybody have more choice now.
But as a follow-up, I think a lot of the people, the young ones there, would be very interested in the question, what types of skills, both hard and soft, do the captains of industry look for the people you recruit? So that they need a master's in business administration, must they be STEM, science, technology, etc., etc.? Please tell us what are your requirements for a person, starting with Hans and then back to Riza.
Yeah, as I mentioned in the speech earlier, it's basically I'm guided by my father. And what we have been looking for are really basic values. Values towards life, values towards work. I mean, a lot of people try to be so sophisticated and things like that, but to me, I mean, I've encountered some millennials who come to me and said, and I saw potentials in them. We really like to give chance to all the young ones. But there are those who are, I think they're living in their own world. They would come to me and said, sir, I like my job, but I have to go. Then I would ask, why? You just barely started, sir. I'm not making an impact to the company. But I said, what do you expect to make in 6 months' time? So I just believe that patience is one of those basic values that I really like to see with the young ones. Resourcefulness is also one of those that I like to see, because in daily challenge you will be meeting up to different in daily lives or work, you'll be meeting up to different challenges. So you should be resourceful to really look for the solution. It's just basic requirements. Maybe to summarize it, it's the heart, whether you are really passionate about your job. That's the one we're looking for.
Well, my experience being an entrepreneur starting a small business basically taught me what the requirements of taking a medium-sized business like our company become where we are today. When you challenge the giants like San Miguel, the number one soft drink that they owned then was Coca-Cola, Magnolia ice cream. And I guess I come from LaSalle, but I told Brother Arvin when he made me a director that I'm not even a graduate of LaSalle. So it's really the experience of what you do when you succeed and you fail, and you meet people. And hiring the right people with the right attitude, with that passion, with that right gut. You, as an entrepreneur, you would know that person, whether he'll fit in the organization. And using legal resources to challenge giants is quite critical. And the type of marketing that we look at for a person is somebody who's an entrepreneurial marketing mind. And building brands, marketing is very critical. And of course, the fulfillment side, the logistics and all of that, production, supply chain, come with it. So, being street smart is really important. In my own experience with 14 years of advocating entrepreneurship and meeting all types of sizes, and from Angel CEO was really nothing with 20 stores. When we awarded him, I saw his growth. The guy studied in Iloilo. Simple man, street smart. There are many like that out there, and they are the billionaires that you see today in our country. So if we can take inspiration, the youth out there, take inspiration from that kind of approach. Maybe it might not be in LaSalle or Ateneo, but if you really put your heart to it, you have the right passion. And many of those that are challenged with poverty, like this lady over here, poverty is the greatest motivator to succeed. In fact, wealth is the biggest challenge for my family. My kids have it all good today. What is going to motivate them to be like me when we had, we were eating in simple restaurants? Today, they don't experience that. I mean, they travel premium economy, business class, they see the world. So I didn't experience that growing up. And many of those who were challenged with poverty, that was and is their motivator. So I see so many entrepreneurs coming from the province, succeeding and beating people like us out there.
The current group leaving school is a tough one. First of all, they get impatient very, very quickly. At the first moment of boredom, mistake, something goes wrong, they're out. That was never the case during our time. You go into a company and you slug it out because things get a lot better over time. So we're finding actually that the more stable recruits are when they come in their second job. Another problem is that many young people want to become entrepreneurs right away. So there's nothing wrong with that in itself, but in terms of bringing in the best people, that's a little bit more challenging. What I look for when we interview people is we're really looking for people that will fit into our culture. Doesn't mean that they can't be innovative, they can't be a little bit different, but that their core values are the same as ours. And more, Bernie, which is a very good sign for our country, just about every employee, when you get to the Q&A at the end where they get to ask you questions, they're trying to find out what your businesses are doing for society. And those have become the most popular jobs right now. The ones where they, through their work, they can make a difference.
Well, very basic, of course, is the competence. First thing that we look for, that they have the required skills for the job. And then the other one that we look for is the ability to work well with people. Because if I were to think of the single most important characteristic of a person working in a corporation, it's probably that ability to work well with other people. So like I always say, I'd rather have a star team than a team of stars. Because if everyone wants to be the star, sometimes you get nothing done. And the last one maybe that I would like to mention, aside from everything else we mentioned, is resilience. Because what we've observed with the people coming out of schools now is there's that lack of resilience. In our time, you fail over and over again, just keep getting up and trying again. But now, sometimes when people fail, they quit, they go to another job, or they think something's wrong with them, they need counseling. So more and more we see the need for counseling, the need for all of this. But the resilience is really going to be important, because if there's one thing that's surely going to happen to all the young people here, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail many times before you even succeed.
Great. I think it's time for
Yes,
questions.
I think we have just a little time for maybe one question for the audience. We really wish we could spread that out, but as it happens, the time is run short. And I guess that's the sign of a great conversation and a great event, is that you're always wondering where the time went. And so I think we have one question. Whereabouts? Oh, here we are.
Hi, good afternoon. I guess this is more really for the captains. I just wanted to ask, what are your kinakabahan din yung mic. But what are your thoughts on the concept of social entrepreneurship for businesses that solve social issues and at the same time try to earn profit? You think this model is actually sustainable? And if yes, you think that this model is sustainable? What does it take for social entrepreneurs to be as successful as companies like yours?
So the question is about social entrepreneurship. Businesses that are for profit, but whose main mission is to contribute to a solution of a social problem, whether it be poverty alleviation, meaning the environment, fostering values. So anyone want to start? Issue towards social entrepreneurship. Yes, please, Fernando.
I think there's room for both areas, philanthropy and social entrepreneurship for profit. Over time, I've become a huge believer in the for-profit model. And so more and more finding solutions to our problems in the country with social impact through the business model, I think is the way to go.
I agree with Fernando. I mean, I've encountered a lot of social entrepreneurs, and you really still have to look at the business model. I mean, it has to be sustainable, it has to have some profit to be able to, of course, to sustain itself. And a lot of enterprises today that are geared for profit can also have that social impact, be it in the digital space, especially connecting marketplaces that help micro and small entrepreneurs or a sector that is severely challenged. So my advice, many of these events that promote social enterprise, it has to be sustainable.
Okay, for the social entrepreneurship, I'm not really sure because to me it's a very, very big, it's a very wide range. But one of the areas that our company has been focusing right now is really education. Through education, we believe we are developing the future of the generations. Giving them the right opportunity, being able to develop themselves. As my father has always said over and over again, education is the greatest equalizer. So our company has really focused into that direction, as what I've shared with Bernie earlier, that watch us the next few years, National University, here we come.
Bernie, I just wanted to add, even if I'm not a captain, but because I'm seeing it from all sides, right? I'm in Philippine Development Foundation, so we're always raising money for what is considered a social endeavor, right? And then I'm from the VC side, so I've been proposed many social enterprises, and right now I'm actually in charge of one of them, which is this Zepto Digital Education, and I'm also helping them raise money. It's really hard if you don't follow what Fernando was alluding to. You need to be financially sustainable. You need profits because you can't keep begging for money. It's so hard to beg for money, especially if you're used to no, right, Carlo? But that's Carlo. He's tough. But the others, it hurts. It's very hard, and also it's tiring. When in fact you should be focusing on the business or the service that you're trying to provide, which is to help others. But to make it this social enterprise, sometimes it's a much abused word. Sometimes you hide your sins in the word social, right? Let's avoid that. You really need to provide a service first. Make sure that the people we're educating really can be competitive. They can work for Heidi and our companies, rather than give them a fake education and then give them a diploma, collect money and profits, but don't give a proper upbringing, including the values that you're alluding to, so that they won't be like the 6 months in our companies. So that's with that. I'd like to congratulate Punlaan because that's what they're doing, right?
I just want to add that all over the world now, there's a trend in that investors are looking for companies that have social impact. And they're willing to invest their money, but what's needed is the discipline in those companies. So social entrepreneurship is fine, but you have to be run like a business. But the expectations for profit, for ROE, have to be lowered. So for people investing in social enterprises, do it, but lower your expectations. Don't expect the same kind of return that you would in other corporations.
From all the answers, I think we can categorize companies that have a positive impact on society as the traditional companies, but who have CSR programs. So they definitely, through their CSR programs, are making a contribution to some problems of society. The second would be those that are really looking for impact investment, as Riza mentioned. There are, for example, a number of investment banks that will only invest in enterprises that have a very clear impact on society. And the third one would be the social enterprise. And I think probably Hans is too modest to refer to National University as a social enterprise because, as he said, he's not going to make money as long as it is break-even. His siblings will continue to support him. So that's a typical social enterprise. No? Neither making money nor losing money because otherwise it will disappear. No? So I think, Leon, is
right.
Right.
So we'd love to continue this conversation, but alas, that's all the time we have. Please join me in thanking our captains and trailblazers, Fernando Zobel de Ayala, Hannah C., Joey Conception, Riza Mantaring, Stephanie C., Carla Belantar, and Heidi Enriquez, and Paco Sandez. Thanks as well to Quintin and Bernie, our moderators. And we have a little token for all here. Again, thank you for staying so long and thank you for being so patient. I'll let you get back to that swim and to your cars parked in the middle of C5. Have a wonderful afternoon. I'm Leon Pexon. I'll see you around. If we can call just these speakers.